Good morning, welcome, and a massive thank you for joining this session on Data-Driven Creative with DV360. My name is Nick King, and I'm the DV360 Automotive Lead at Google. I'm joined by Ben Sidebottom, who's a sales engineer from Google, Shane Smith from Jellyfish, and Ollie Marlowe-Thomas from AdLib. My role, and the role of our wider DV360 team, is to ensure that marketers and agencies get optimal use out of our DV360 product, its tools, data, and creative formats. Now, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is because I've seen that when creative is done well, it can really transform campaigns' performance. So I do hope that you find today really useful. I'm thrilled to have so many of you on this virtual event from all over the world. You're all very welcome, and I hope that wherever you are, that you have a coffee or a tea or maybe something even stronger, depending on where you are. Next slide. So before I dive into the agenda for the day, I wanted to share with you some quick housekeeping with you first. On the screen now, you'll see a link which will take you to a web page where you can submit questions to us or our guest speakers along the way. Please don't be shy. We're all friends. This is a safe space, and we welcome your questions as we go. We also have time for a Q&A at the end, so don't worry. And if you ask a question and we don't have time to answer, or maybe we don't even know the answer, we'll ensure to get back to you to your question directly. Right. Okay, so normally for an event like this, it would be our custom to host you at one of our beautiful offices, fill you up with tea and cake, and then host a really nice post-event networking drinks. But of course, sadly, this isn't possible. So in a first for me, this session is obviously live on YouTube or across a live stream, but it still promises to be a fantastic viewing experience. To make things easy for you, after the event, we'll share a form which firstly provides you the opportunity to give us any feedback. So thank you in advance for that. But if you want to get in touch with our partners, we'll have their contact details available at the end as well. So don't worry, there's plenty of opportunities to get in touch. So next slide. Here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. Shortly, I'm going to take you through a very brief introduction to data-driven creative. Then my collaborator for this event, Ben Sidebottom, will be doing a live demo of Google's product called Ad Canvas. This is a visual editor which you can use to build and edit creatives in real time. He'll also share some really great examples of recent campaigns where it was used. Later, we'll be joined by Ollie Marlowe-Thomas, who's the CEO of AdLib, and Shane Smith, who's the VP of Creative at Jellyfish. Both AdLib and Jellyfish are Google partners who have been doing an amazing job at partnering with brands. And today we'll be showing some really exciting creative examples where they've used DV360 and data-driven creative to deliver high-impact campaigns for their customers. Right, let's jump right in. Next slide, please. Today's session is designed to cater for you, no matter at what stage you're at on that creative journey. From nascent use of standard creative to building a more advanced creative strategy, either yourself or through a partner. We often get asked, whose role is it to manage data-driven creative? And our view is that it's important to work with your media agency and your creative agency throughout the whole process. You can work with your dedicated Google account manager to help facilitate that process. And we'll help pull in experts from across the business if additional training or support is required. In the case of advanced creative strategies, we advocate the use of a dedicated partner to help build this out. And as I mentioned, we'll be hearing from two of those partners today who will share more detail on how to do this. So the core programmatic principle of creative campaigns remains the same. Reach the right person at the right time with the right message. So when describing to my role to my family or my friends, I describe it as my job is to ensure that you don't see ads which aren't relevant to you by using data to effectively fuel creative with appropriate messaging. And I suspect this is probably the role of everyone in this session in some form or another. So let's start off by asking, what actually is data-driven creative? Data-driven creative at its core is about bringing together audience and contextual signals to enable personalized ads, which are aligned to the campaign KPIs. That's it in its core. Research conducted by Google Media Labs found that 70% of campaign performance can be attributed to creative, and high quality creative increases ad viewing by nearly 6% and nearly doubles purchase intent versus low quality creative. So it's really, really important. But let's take a step back. It's sometimes perceived that delivering dynamic creative can be complicated to set up, hard to report, or even difficult to optimize against. Today, I hope that we can dispel some of those creative myths and demonstrate how effective use of data, whether it be first party, third party, or using Google audiences via DV360, is easier to execute than you may think. In a moment, I'm going to pass you over to Ben, who's going to take you through the various stages that exist when it comes to delivering data-driven creative. And whilst Ben talks you through each phase, have a think about where your brand might sit today based on the current activity and what you need to do in order to shift to a more sophisticated creative strategy. Thank you. And that's all from me. And I hope that you find the content really useful today and look forward to fielding some of your questions later in the session. Over to Ben.
Great, thank you, Nick, for that. So when we talk to clients about dynamic creative and the data-driven side of things, one of the things we often hear is that they're already doing this and that their creative strategy is already working quite well for them. But as we move into the next slide, what we can start to look at are different kind of stages within that process. So if we look at this creative maturity framework that we've developed, and this will be very similar to other frameworks that you may have seen from Google, but essentially what we do is we break this down to these 4 key areas. Now, if you look at the beginning of the process and that nascent stage, what we're looking at here are clients that have started working on standard creative. They may have multiple options or multiple creative running at once. They may have slightly different messaging within those creative, or they may be using multiple video formats as well. And generally, they're all individually produced creative. So they're having to kind of create those individually which can obviously take time and effort. And then some of the times as well, they're applying basic audience profiles or strategies to it. So a very common process is having kind of like an always on activity piece with a couple of creative, and then running things like retargeting messaging, again, using slightly different messaging for that retargeting element. Now, as we move away from nascent and into emerging, this is where you can start to use things like rich media assets. You can start to use rich media templates that are available. So, for example, you can start to use templates that have already started to build in things like photo galleries or kind of like nice scrolling effects, so things move and change, the user scrolls in the page. And also you can start to take advantage of things like engagement metrics as well. So within a lot of our products, you're not just looking at impressions and clicks, but you can also start to look at where did they click within that creative. Was that creative even viewed within the asset itself? And you can start to use more advanced audience segmentation within that as well to start really bespoking that message to your audience. Then as we move from emerging into developed, this is where we start to look at custom build creative. And again, a lot of brands will be already doing custom creative builds within their teams. But really, this is about starting to branch out on those rich media elements, starting to look at using things like creative components. So creative components are essentially pre-built components that you can start to take advantage of without having to build and code everything. Again, if you look at things like map plugins, so if you want to do things like location of your nearest branch or dealership, you can start to use components that are already pre-built to do that. Photo galleries already mentioned. Again, you don't have to program and build all of those photo galleries. There's a lot of creative components out there where you can start to make your creative really engaging and really rich for that user experience. And then you can start to adapt even further contextual signals, audience signals, first-party data, which again can come from either your general tags within the site, or they can come from things like data management platforms that you have set up. Now, as we move away from developed, this is when you start getting into the more advanced side of things. So this is where we start to automate a lot of this process. Now, today's session really is focusing on emerging and developed from my point of view when it comes to things like Ad Canvas and DV360's ability to kind of do that. And then the advanced side of things is where we start looking, is where our partners come into play and start to help those clients utilize our Studio and Campaign Manager products. And it's really about how can you create creative at scale? How can we ensure we've got tens, hundreds, thousands of variants that can all cater for that individual message for that user at that time of day? And it's really about that one-to-one bespoke messaging. It's really about using things like machine learning to analyze creative and understand, at what point was that user engaged with that video? Could we take that video engagement and actually create micro videos or micro animations or images from that video set using that machine learning techniques? And this is where we start to get into some really advanced use cases and techniques for dynamic creative. So this is kind of the framework that we see. This is how we see clients moving from one aspect to another. And hopefully with today's session, what we can start to do is give you some ideas around that emerging and developed space, and then also how you can start to take advantage of the more advanced features that are available. So what we'll do now is, as we move on to the next slide, we'll start to look at DV360's Ad Canvas. So I'll be doing a full demo of this in a second, but just to give you a bit of an idea, the way that Ad Canvas works is that there is the first stage is really about building out that creative asset. So within the tool, there are a set of templates that you can use, and they're pre-built rich media creative that you can simply upload a couple of creative to, upload a couple of assets, maybe a video, maybe an image, maybe changing the background color or some text. And you can create multiple variants within that tool as well. So you can start to build out different variants for different audience needs and for different targeting needs. Now, on the next slide, once you've done those creative, you can then start to set up what we call the dynamic rules. And the dynamic rules are essentially a way of telling the system, these are the audiences we want to show that particular variant to. And within those dynamic rules, you've got all of your audience data. So this could be your first-party data, which will come from floodlight tags. It can come from Google Analytics 360, but it can also come from your data management platform that you have integrated into DV360. We also have our Google audience data in there as well. So we've got our interest and affinity marketing data in there as well. So if there's any of that Google data you're interested in bespoke in your creative towards, then that's all available within the platform too. We have content data in there as well, so contextual data based on the page content. So you can start to tailor your message based on the types of pages and sites that users are visiting. You can also do day parting, and you can also target based on previously visited or previously engaged creative. So if someone's clicked on a creative before, you can actually target a different creative to show once they've engaged with that first creative. So you can start to build out this kind of journey and this path based off your creative messaging as well. Then on the next slide, once you select those dynamic elements, it's all about assignment. So this is now where you can go through and you can say, right, I want to assign this creative to this audience, or I want to assign these 3 creative to that one audience, and I want it to rotate and optimize within that audience set. So once you've done all that assignment, that's it. Once that's made available, you essentially have a single creative within the platform that you can assign to your line items, to your insertion orders, and then all that decision that you've built within that single creative will then be done on the fly as the user engages. And as the user moves from audiences, they will start to see those creative build out. So on the next slide, we've also then got our quick launch templates. So you don't have to build all of your creative from scratch. We've provided a set of templates that are available out of the box. Directly in the UI, you can go and build any of these formats that are on screen now. So with Flipbook, I'll show you a little demo of this in a second, but with Flipbook, all you need to do is upload a single video, a logo image, and then create your call to action text. With that, you can create this really nice kind of scrolling engagement. So as the user scrolls up and down, there's a section of that video that will play back and forth. When they then click on that, it will then start to play that video. We also have other formats as well. So panorama, again, there's a logo image, a background image, and then a couple of different what we call accent images. So these are just like little images that dot around. Cue cards, again, there's one single background image, and then all you need is 3 pieces of text. So maybe it's your USPs, maybe it's your selling points, maybe it's some slogan that you want to have in there. And then on the end, we've got our new audio mixer. So I'm going to demo this as well within the platform live. This is really new. It only came out sort of a couple of months ago. And this is kind of our first stage of helping clients build their own audio creative directly in the platform. Now, on the next slide, when we talk about our moving away from just templates. So again, those templates will work really well for a lot of clients, and they'll have a lot of value in getting you started when it comes to rich media and dynamic creative. But ultimately, a lot of clients will want to have their own branding in place. They'll have brand guidelines, they'll have measures they need to have within those creative. It might be certain fonts, certain styles, certain ways things look and feel. So this is where you can then start to build your own creative. Now, as I'm sure many of you are aware, you can build your creative in any authoring tool and use that within DV360. But to take full advantage of our Ad Canvas product and all of the dynamic variables that are available within that, you can use our Google Web Designer tool. So this is a free authoring tool that's available to download at the link there, webdesigner.withgoogle.com. It's on Mac and Windows. You can just download it for free and have a play. But essentially, it's a fully authoring tool. It allows you to build all your animation, your creative. It works with video, works with all your assets. But it also has all of those components that I talked about as well. So if you want to start taking advantage of some of our automated components, again, if you look at things like our maps components, so you don't have to go building integrations into our API. You can just use that component to pinpoint the location. We've got components in there for things like photo galleries, QR codes, all sorts of different available components in there that allow you to make these really nice creative. But the nice thing as well is that it works directly with DV360. So if you want to make any of those elements dynamic, so if you want to change the text that's on the button, if you want to change the logo image, if you want to change the background image, if you want to change the color of your text, all of those elements can be made dynamic within the tool. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail today on Google Web Designer. We'll save that for another session. But if you are interested in more, I highly recommend you download it, have a play. There's also a channel called Google Web Designer, which you can search for on YouTube. And there's a ton of videos on there that will show you how to use Google Web Designer and start to help you get along with that. On the left side, what we have here is a few components that are available within Web Designer as well. So these are a few formats that you might see within the platform that you may have heard of. So we've got our parallax format. This is essentially where you can use a few different images and you can create this really nice depth of field. So as the user scrolls up and down, you can change how the different images kind of scroll, which allows you to get that kind of feel of depth. Swirl is a nice new interactive format that we've released recently. And this is essentially allowing you to use 3D models. So if you have products that you've already got 3D models for, if you're selling furniture, if you're selling cars, if you're selling any kind of phones, products, technology, and you've got those 3D models available, you can now, again, just using drag and drop components within Web Designer, you can start to use those 3D models directly in your creative and allow that user to interact with that 3D model. They can zoom in, they can look around. It's a really nice, engaging format, and we've already seen some really good results from it. And a couple of formats that are in beta that we talk about are things like live streaming. So if you've got a live streaming event you're doing on YouTube, you can actually promote that live stream event in an ad and actually show the live stream directly in that ad and allow users to come through to that event. So if you are interested in promoting events, that is a format that we're beta testing at the moment. And then Flow is a full interstitial, full screen mobile ad format that we're playing with at the moment, which allows you to essentially upload different images, videos, text, and then it creates this really nice long scrolling effect that allows you to essentially show off lots of different assets within that single creative and allows the user to engage at different points within that creative as well. So these are all components that are available in Google Web Designer that allow you to kind of build and create creative much quicker than previously. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into the demo. So I'm going to take over presentation mode on here. And what we'll do is we'll start to demo our DV360 product. So hopefully what you can see on screen now is our UI. This is our DV360 UI. This is what we call our format gallery. So within the advertiser space, what we have is you have the ability to upload creative as you've always been able to. We have this format gallery tab here, which allows us to look at our ad canvas piece. So within the format gallery, what we have here is we have all of our templated creative that I've already talked about. So here's that flipbook one, here's Swirl, the 3D model one, panorama, and essentially you can start to look through all the different available formats that we have. We have things like native built into here as well. So if you want to start doing anything around native, this also works in our ad canvas tool, where you can start to add in the multiple images, multiple long and short text descriptions, and it will build those for you. The video ones I've already talked about, flipbook, native video, etc. So you can really go in here and find lots of different formats that work. And the way this works is that if I, for example, look at something like cue cards, which is a nice responsive format, what I can do is I can have a look at what the details of that are. So if I click into details, I can very quickly see where it works, how it's responsive, what assets I need to make this work. And then what we have here is where you can build them directly in the UI. You have this little blue create button. So if I click create on this, then what you can then start to do is actually build those creatives directly in the platform. So the first thing that pops up is this responsive piece. For those that aren't aware, responsive ads are essentially ads that work across multiple sizes. So by default, this is selecting 9, but you can go into here and select more if you are interested in supporting other formats, other sizes, sorry. Once you've done that, you then have all the options to upload logos, images, change all your text down this right-hand side, change colors, etc. And this is all based off what the template allows you to do. So every template will have different options down the side. And when you then build your own later on, you get to decide exactly what elements of dynamic, and they will all appear here. Now, rather than showing you the process on a templated creative, I want to show you the process on a custom creative in a second. But just to give an example of what this looks like once filled out from a templated point of view. So this is one I created before. So what I've done here is I've uploaded some different background images. I've changed the text. So you can see here, this is our internal car example. It's a Neuron. It's a brand that we've made for demoing. But essentially, it's a hybrid car. What I've done here is I've created a hybrid view, which is talking about how many miles it can get out of a single charge. So 370 miles at a single charge. As I interact with this, you can see I've got don't let the battery hold you back. As I scroll down, it then prompts me for a test drive. And because I've got multiple formats, multiple sizes here, you can see that it's now created all of those sizes for me. So again, if I interact with this, move it up and down, I can already very quickly create those different sizes without any additional information. And all I've done here is uploaded a simple background image, a logo, and added some text. That's all I've done to create all of this. And what you can then do is make copies and change the background image, change the text, etc. So here I've done one for performance, and then I can start to target those to different audiences. So I could then say, you know what, the hybrid one I'll target to hybrid intent users, people that are interested in hybrid technology. I can then target the performance ones. But again, I'll demonstrate the dynamic rules as we get towards the final demo. I just wanted to show that one. And then one of the other formats I talked about was Flipbook. So Flipbook is the one where you can upload a single video. So here's my video, my MP4. It's a 30-second video, but it can be kind of any length, up to a couple of minutes it'll work with. And then you can upload a logo. And then what you can do within this, if I just preview this and show you first, what it does is, as I scroll up and down, there's a bit of that video that will basically play as I scroll. And you can select which part of that video that will scroll within that. And then if I interact with this, it'll then simply play that video that I've interacted with, and then the user can mute, they can close, etc. So it's a really nice, engaging ad. And again, to change that scrolling part, if I just scroll down to it, what you can then do here is you can actually change that in here. So for example, if I move this down, I can say, you know what, I actually want this part here to be my scroller. So now what happens is when I interact with this, that part now becomes my scrolling part. So you can really customize some of these templates as well. Great. So that's just a couple of examples of our templated suite. What I want to show you though is one of our custom ones. So if I jump into custom here, you can also upload your own custom creative formats as well. So if you've built something in Google Web Designer and you want to reuse it over and over again, and you want the teams to be able to kind of create those and use them as much as you want, you can actually upload your own custom formats, and they will appear here in the custom section. So if I hit create on this, and again, this is just a custom format that I've built as kind of a demo. What I've got here is I've got a couple of sizes that I've built for, so I've made it responsive for these three sizes. And essentially all it is it's a creative for promoting Google products. So what I can do is I can, for example, drag in a little assistant icon here. What I can then do is I can then change the text for that. So I can say something like, because this is for assistant, I can say, hey Google, what is the weather like today? Oops, live demos, always is key. So what is the weather like today? So I can change that text on the fly. It's all real-time updates. I can then change the color of that text. So our corporate gray that we have for our branding is there. And then I can change what this call to action is here. Now I can change this to anything, but for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to change this to Google Assistant, just so you see the product. Now, if I hit refresh on this creative, you now see that all the animation that was there has now worked with that image and with that text. And also what you notice here is just to kind of give an example of dynamic, there's a couple of things I've done. One is you can see this like confetti type effect going down. That is one of our components that's available. It's a drag and drop component in Google Web Design. You don't have to code or build that. You just drag it in, you select what you want, what colors you want it to be. You can select how much of the confetti is there. You can select which direction it goes, and then that will just build for you. Oh, and one caveat I like to point out on live streams is that on a live stream, this may look a bit jerky because of the live stream, but when you use it in your computer and use it on UI and it's live, it's absolutely smooth. I just like to point that out because I've heard before that sometimes it can look jerky when we're kind of casting it over a live stream, but I can assure you it is very smooth. You can definitely have a play with it yourselves. Another aspect that's dynamic as well is you'll notice the colors change each time. So that was then a yellow and green. If I refresh, it's now green and blue. If I refresh, it's red and green. And it's the same across all of these ad formats. So there's an example there of how we've made this quite rich, dynamic. We've made some elements. You can add your own custom code. You can build exactly what you want and then make all the elements dynamic as you need. So I'm going to give this a name. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy. So simply make a copy. I'm going to zoom out so you can all see it. I'm now going to drag in the photos icon and then say store every memory forever. So Google Photos, I've now just changed that logo image. I'm going to change this to Google Photos again, just for the demo purposes. I've now got new creative with a different message, different story for that particular audience. I'm going to change this to photos. As I mentioned before, you can do dynamic rules. So now I can start to say, based off this particular creative, who do I want to show this creative to? So if I go into dynamic rules really quickly, and then get started on those, these are all my dynamic rule elements that I have. So we've got audience lists, I mentioned, that's all your first party data from Floodlights, Google Analytics 360, and from your data management platform. If you have an integrator from a first party perspective, it also includes my Google audience data. Categories is the contextual targeting, location is geolocation stuff, schedule is your day parting, and then line item is your specific elements in the line item you want to target on. For today, I'm going to just use our affinity and in-market audiences. I'm going to search for photo, and then select photo and video services. I'm then going to select tech files for people that are interested in new technology. Again, what I'm assuming here is that people that like assistance, people that like to be able to tell their phone to turn lights on and off, to be able to tell them to do various things, they're probably people that are quite into technology. So what I'm going to do now is, these assign buttons here allow you to now say, right, for photos and video audience, I want to show the photo ad. And for the tech files, I want to show the assistant ad. And then underneath here, you've got everyone else. So not everyone's going to fit into those two audiences. So for everyone else, I'm just going to select both and let the system optimize based off performance, which could be click-through, could be conversion. Again, that will take the optimization you select when you're doing your line items. Alternatively, you could have an alternative creative, a generic one, which has a different messaging again for everyone else. Now, with priority groups as well, you notice here we've got priority group 1 and then everyone else. We can also create additional priority groups. So priority group 2, all that means is that if the user doesn't fit into my first priority group in one of those audiences, I'm now going to look in my priority group 2. So what you could now do here is add contextual information. So, again, you could say photos, select photo. Right, photography and digital arts as an example, right? You can go through and select any of these that you want, and then assign that particular creative to that particular category. So if these are fit in priority group 1, they fit into priority group 2, they'll see that one. If they don't fit into priority group 2, they go into everyone else. So you can create this hierarchy. You can add, you can add more multiple priority groups and start creating that layering out. And the other feature we've got as well, which I'll quickly demo, is the ability to create all this in bulk. So we also have a bulk uploader. You can download a template, which essentially downloads a CSV file with all the headings. And then what you can then do is upload that using Google Sheets or a CSV file. If I quickly load in a demo, you can see this is now uploading. While it's doing that, I'll show you what that sheet looks like really quickly. So what we can see here is all it simply is the name of the asset, the sizing, the images I want to upload. And just to be clear, these are what the system will do is it'll download those images. It won't use your site's images and spam your site with all of your impressions. The system will actually download those images, and then those images are hosted from our Google servers for speed and efficiency. I've got all the description text, got those background colors, all my links. You can see here I've got tracking codes in them for each individual creative size. So every creative size is going to be tracked individually, and then I've got my call to action. So what I've done now is I've uploaded that. It says your sheet's ready to import. 2 variants will be unassigned because I've already done some assignments, and obviously I'm changing those. So that's absolutely fine. It's just letting you know that's going to happen. But then when I hit import, those 6 variants are now going to be available. So if I just zoom out of here, all of those, just so I can show. Obviously, this will look a little bit jerky because there's lots of creative loading at once, which is not, I'm only doing this for demo purposes just to show you how it works. But essentially what I've done now is it's now created all those different variants. I've now got my system, my documents, my Gmail, my maps. And as I scroll down, and I also have my photos and my translate. So all of those has been created with a very simple bulk uploader. You can upload up to 2,000 variants into the system. So, I've demonstrated 6 here, but you can go up to 2,000 with this. and then you can start to make that assignment back into those creatives. So it's a really neat, quick, easy tool to make lots of variants really quickly. And it also allows your creative teams to build you nice templates that you can then start to do from a media perspective and start to, you can start to change the text, the style, etc. yourselves, and actually start experimenting. And another use case I haven't really mentioned as well with this as well, that you can use it for things like A/B testing. So you could just create all these variants, make no dynamic assignments at all, and let the system optimize those variants based off performance, again, through click-through rate or conversion rate, depending what you select at the line item level. So you don't just have to use it for dynamic ruling. You could use this as an A/B multivariate testing tool as well, which is quite a neat way of using it. Again, I'm rushing through just because of time. I'm just going to show one more really quickly, our audio mixer. This is the new one that's again, just been released recently. What I want to do here is just quickly show what this looks like when it comes to using it. So what Audio Mixer allows you to do is it allows you to upload snippets of audio files. So these can be MP3s, it could be things like your voice, your sound effects, background music. So what I can do here is I can say, right, I want to. So if I click on Add Music, it's then going to let me select MP3 to upload. I'll also add a voice, which I will do there. And then I'm going to add in a little sound effect as well, which is just a short MP3 snippet. Let's add a little sound effect there. You can change your landing page like you can do with all of them. You can also upload a companion creative as well. So audio ads don't just have to play on non-visible entities. They play in places like Spotify and places like that, where the user will still have something visible. So if the user is viewing that particular piece that's playing an audio ad, then a companion ad will just simply show that ad so they can see the brand. And again, they can click through those as well from on this landing page URL. So all I've got here is I've got my 3 elements. If I play this now, it's going to sound a bit messy.
You're moving into a new place, playing hooky when the server.
So a couple of things wrong with this so far. One is the voice isn't loud enough, the background music's too loud, and the engine is in the completely wrong place. So what I'll do here is I can drag this across. So again, this is all just WYSIWYG stuff. You can drag and drop and place it. So I'm going to place it around the 13-second mark. I'm going to turn down the gain as well on that sound effect. I'm going to make it half the volume, and you can see here the sound waves dropped because it's essentially saying, right, I'm going to play this at half volume. This background music's way too long, so I'm just going to cut this down. Again, I'm just going to drag it down, and then I'm going to fade it out for the last 5 seconds. So I'm just going to put a little 5-second fade out there. And then what else can I do? So the voice as well, I'm going to just make that a bit louder. And then the background music, I'm just going to make a bit quieter, just so it all fits a bit better. So I'll go back to the beginning. Oops, my mistake. That's beginning, play.
Whether you're moving into a new place, playing hooky when the surf is up, or planning a picnic in the park, the Neuron can take you there. With lightning fast charging, 250 miles electric range. We're here, wherever life takes you. Test drive the Neuron at your local Dorado dealership.
Right, so you get the idea. You can start to play with different pieces. You can try different voices, different background musics. You can create multiple copies and then start to target those within the system. And as I said, this is relatively new, so there are more developments coming with this, but audio creative is becoming a big part of our focus, and we want to make sure that we're able to give you guys the best kind of tech and experience that we can with it. So that's the end of the demo. I just want to jump into a couple of case studies before I hand over to our partners. So I'm going to stop that there. And then jump into our case studies. Perfect. So the first case study on the next slide is from A1 Telecom. So these guys were essentially looking at how could they improve their creative performance during the COVID pandemic. So this is a really recent case study. What they wanted to do is they wanted to make all their creative elements a bit easier to work with. They want to be able to respond better to the environment that they were in. So if there's any sudden news about the pandemic, if there's anything, any kind of new developments with it, they could respond to it very quickly without having to kind of go back to their creative agency, have to rebuild the creative and then come back. So what they did is they started to use Ad Canvas within the media team to be able to change that messaging and change their story based off what was going on. So they got their design teams to build them a nice template, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner there, which essentially has a background image, has a logo, has a call to action, has some text and some promotional information on the top right-hand corner, which they could opt to have in or out. And then what that allowed them to do is that allowed the media teams to essentially create lots of different variants. It allowed them to respond to the different pandemic news that was coming out and allowed them to really tailor the message specifically to their users and to their customers, but without having to keep going back and forth with the creative team. So overall, they found that they found 80% faster creation when it came to new ad formats and variants. Again, that really helped them do things like A/B testing and very specific audience targeting. And they claim there's 100% cost in production saving in production costs, and that was through the reuse of their template. So where they had built a template before, essentially when they ran this next testing campaign, they were using a template from a previous one. So they're able to really see production savings there because they didn't have to produce a new creative. Their media teams could do it all. Obviously, they still had to create some of the assets like the images and come up with new stories and new texts and headlines. But that was a much quicker process and saved them a lot of work for their creative agencies. So it's a really good use case for them, and they found it to be really beneficial during this crisis. And then the last case study on the next slide is Lavazza. They're launching some new brands, and they were looking at how could they stay competitive within a very, very competitive coffee space. Now, there's lots of different brands that do a very similar thing, but Lavazza wants to kind of be above that and kind of show off their stuff in a more dynamic way. So what they did is they worked with their agency, Wavemaker, and Google. They created some brainstorming sessions going through, what kind of key triggers could they use to show off the messaging, what audience data could they use from Google, what audience data could they use from themselves, how could they take advantage of things like geolocation data, day parting, could the messaging be different for breakfast versus lunchtime versus evening. And essentially they created this large, very high scale strategy. And what they then used is they used our Studio and Campaign Manager products. And these are the products that our partners are going to talk about more in a second. But essentially, they use those products to create mass creative scale. So they had hundreds of different variants, all running across all these different audience targeting pieces, using all the different segments, different geolocations, to very, very specifically tailor that message based off that individual signals that they were giving off. And again, they found that this allowed them to have a 14% improvement on qualified CPA. So they got quite a large uplift in their CPA performance based off this. And they saw also a 38% click-through rate improvement versus their static display they were doing before. So again, they're paying for those impressions anyway. What they're able to now do is drive a lot more traffic to their website, drive a lot more brand awareness, but also get that higher improvement on CPA as well, just by using this dynamic creative. And this was over a very short period as well. So this was over a 4-week period. So it was considering it was only 4 weeks, they were able to get these kind of numbers improvements using data and creative. It was really impressive. So enough from me. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to hand over to our partners so they can talk to you about what they've been working on the type of work they're doing with their clients. We're going to hear from Shane from Jellyfish first, and then we'll hear from Ollie from AdLib after. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Shane from Jellyfish.
Thank you, Ben. We can have the next slide. Great demo, Ben. So firstly, I'd just like to thank our partners at Google for this opportunity to help bring the great theory that Ben's just described there to life using some of our own data-driven creative case study examples. So my name is Shane Smith. I work at Jellyfish as the VP of Creative Production. For those that don't know Jellyfish are a full-service global partner for some of the world's leading brands, including eBay, Netflix, Toyota, and Decker's brands such as UGG. We employ over 1,400 digital experts across 30 plus offices globally. I think that number has increased a little bit since I put these slides together. which is fantastic. So on the next slide, I'm going to briefly talk about how Jellyfish combine agency services with consultancy training, technology and creative to deliver the best possible outcomes for our clients. Within the global function at Jellyfish, we have over 150 specialists, all made up from developers and video production experts, dynamic creative specialists, user experience teams, who all work alongside the traditional crafts and creative storytellers, art directors and copywriters. So collectively, we bring together award-winning ideas with deep understanding of ad formats and fantastic Google technologies across all channels, along with unique culture and learning and innovation that drives amazing results for our partner clients. We work with client partners to apply the right strategy, data and understanding. This basically gives our clients the right partner for growth. And on the next slide, I'm going to kind of show you how we marriage essentially the art and the science between creative and media. So for most of our clients, we're not talking about creative origination, although of course we can do that at Jellyfish. And we aren't talking about Jellyfish being your creative agency, although we can be that as well if you'd like us to. But what we are actually talking about is making your existing brand assets just work that much harder. And with the global network of those 150 creative specialists and technologists and specialist content producers, we essentially act as a specialist production partner, bringing together all the right expertise from our team with an intimate and deep understanding of platforms and formats. We use our technology to understand which elements of your creative are working, and we also use that technology and our methods to automate the production and optimization of new assets. And this is really kind of where the power of data-driven dynamic creative comes in. So using this process, we're able to compound the effects of creative optimization, and therefore unlocking the full potential of each channel. This basically means unlocking inventory pools while scaling effective asset optimization and ultimately delivering quality experiences to our clients, users and customers wherever they might be online and wherever they might expect to find our client partner brands. Asset optimization enables our client partners to be present in the moments that really matter to their audience, and always with quality assets. We always look to deliver quality creative. And one of those global brands that we've been doing this for over the past few years, and on the next slide, we're going to be talking about Toyota. So just want to talk about our Toyota after sales client. The challenge, one of the challenges that we help this client help solve is how we can make the best use of digital assets to literally drive Toyota car owners back into the network of over 200 Toyota service centers up and down the UK. Now, we've been producing and optimizing assets across a number of channels, including ECRM, email, landing pages, and obviously display. So today I quickly wanted to just demonstrate how we've been able to use data-driven creative using audiences from DV360, and various fairly simple signal and decisioning rules and strategies. This is all part of an always-on media strategy, this campaign, to help promote Toyota after-sales products and services. Therefore, the challenge here is how we can deliver quality creative assets with messaging that is optimized to ensure that the messaging is relevant, the creative is relevant, it's delivered timely, and ultimately the messaging and the creative is useful to the Toyota customer. So how do we go about doing this with a data-driven creative? On the next slide, I'm going to show you what the kind of basic fundamentals that were involved. So as you can imagine, Toyota after sales, as a brand, and as a unit, they have an amazing abundance of first-party data, CRM data. But most of this audience data probably isn't appropriate for use within display creative. So you probably, we've got lots of email addresses and first names and car registration number plates. The technology is there The creative formats are there. We could display that, but that's not what we want to do. That's the creepy side, the old-fashioned side of data-driven creative that we all fell in love with at the very beginning of this journey, probably about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. But what we do know from having deep knowledge and experience with activating data-driven creative is that you don't always need to rely on on those same old kind of creepy retargeting strategies. Instead, now what we are attempting to do here is use a simple combination of signals, context, and rules to really shape a quality solution and really drive that creative activation. We essentially know where and when the Toyota after-sales audience are online. They might be searching for the latest travel information, or they might just be reading content on their favorite publisher websites. Maybe this content is automotive or travel related, so that, you know, there's some contextual elements that we can use there. We probably also know what device they're on. So just some really simple contextual targeting tactics. We can even use the contextual data from the publisher, as Ben mentioned earlier. We could use keywords, potentially then, you know, driving that audience and the relevancy of content that the customer or the audience is expecting to see with the advertising. So for this campaign with Toyota, we start basically using the user's location via a Google Ads geolocation API, and then using a weather API to pull in the forecasted weather for that particular location where that user is. We can then start using the signals to create some rules that allow us to deliver the useful and really relevant messaging within the creative. And this promotes, this messaging is then used to promote the correct products and services that are based on those weather conditions. And then what we also were then doing is tailoring, or looking to tailor maybe the call to action to further drive the customer maybe to their nearest Toyota service center, because we know where they are based on their geolocation. So we can make sure that the information that we give them is correct and up to date. And because we know where they are, and therefore we can just tell them where that nearest dealership is, it makes the messaging, makes the creative really personalized, but useful. So the next stage is to convert this data driven hypothesis using signals into a set of decisioning rules that drive the creative messaging, that then shapes and informs the creative and the production briefs. And this is where the fun really starts. I'll show you on the next slide how we begin to start tackling that. So we basically end up, this here, what you're looking at is a messaging matrix. Can look a little bit like this, where we essentially are tailoring the creative based on some predetermined weather conditions. Obviously, for the UK, we have an abundance of various different weather conditions to choose from. And here we're choosing 7 weather conditions. This in turn gives us the opportunity to promote the most relevant products, Toyota after-sales products or services based on those weather conditions. So, for example, if it's snowing in a user's location, we can promote then the winter or a tyre health check service, or maybe it's windscreen wipers as a product. And we can do this for nearly 1,000 UK postcode locations up and down the UK, ensuring we can promote all the relevant products and services for covering nearly or covering the entire 200 odd UK Toyota service centres. And you'll see here that dynamic creative also allows us to use dynamic destination URLs. And this is really, really important when I think you're not just kind of managing the expectations of a user when they're seeing relevant copy and messaging and creative in a banner ad, but also managing their expectations once they click on that banner ad, to ensure that they're landing on the appropriate landing page, or essentially managing that post-click experience, just to ensure that the customer is then given the best possible chances to convert, or at least get in contact with their local nearest service centre. So on the next slide, we're going to start talking about how the rules of this matrix and various messaging opportunities can then translate into the creative execution. So the ads are dynamically assembled from the rules based on, as I mentioned, the 7 forecasted weather conditions and the user's location. It's a really simple and effective data-driven creative. So you don't have to spend hours deciding on a really kind of complex messaging, rules, audience strategy to be really effective, to make a really effective use of data-driven creative. So as you might be able to tell here, we're using, or you may not be able to tell due to the lag, but essentially what we're doing here, we decided for desktop that we would use really engaging kind of rich video assets to really bring the creative to life, really give the creative some standout on the page. Basically to also visually reinforce the weather forecast conditions. So we have the weather forecast. I think that the API captures a snapshot of the weather forecast for the coming next 5 days. So you can either take an average, or you can take the day, or use the weather forecast for the next day, which is essentially what we've done with this creative here. So the forecast conditions then also determine which of the products or the services that we're then going to include in the CTA button. So as I mentioned, if it's raining tomorrow in the user's location, and we might even know that that user is coming up for a service, we could just change that, switch up that CTA call to action messaging with something that's really relevant. Maybe it's browse our accessories for windscreen wipers, or coming for that that winter health check type messaging. And what we're also doing here is just to be not really creepy, but just to make sure that we're kind of delivering the relevant, useful information within the actual messaging of the banner ad. So what we're doing here is pulling the user's location into the messaging copy, just to give that kind of extra layer of personalization to the creative. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you how we're using the geolocation signal, and we're directing someone that clicks on an ad to the relevant landing page or service center website. And on this next slide, essentially it shows you our decisioning rules that allows Toyota to essentially use a calendar of key dates and periods for upcoming travel events. Obviously that's not possible at the moment, but this dynamic creative has essentially allowed the client, as part of an always on campaign, to pivot slightly in recent months, being able to then just highlight key. So we will still probably use the calendar around those key travel periods. So coming up to a busier time in December, we still want to make sure that the Toyota customers know that the service centers are open, where the nearest service center is, weather conditions changing. People are still going to need cars, so we still want to make sure that we're driving that relevant messaging. So just to quickly recap using this slide and what we've done here, this is using, as I said, geolocation for 980 UK postcodes using Google Ads Geo API. We're using the weather forecast data based on that user's location. That's pulled in via Opa Weather Map API. And we're using rich and engaging assets with backup, static, and some other HTML5 animated data-driven created versions for more specific device-targeted ad formats, so mobile-specific and tablet-specific executions. And we're also using client insights and data to marry up the relevant services and products based on the real-time weather conditions with the most relevant messaging. And with dynamic destination URLs, we're able to ensure the users are directed to the relevant landing page for their nearest Toyota service center. So on the next slide, let's look at some of the results for this campaign. Essentially, this campaign has helped drive Toyota owners back into the dealership. That's without any doubt, and that's been helped by a 9x increase in click-through rate based on the previous product and service creative campaigns that we had previously run for Toyota after sales. There's been a 4x reduction in overall CPC against the target KPI for this particular campaign. And it will probably not come as a surprise to any of you guys in the UK that the weather condition that saw the highest level of engagement was actually rain. And we were able to, as Ben mentioned earlier, we were able to optimize, therefore, any further messaging, especially around rain. There's so many products in the Toyota service centres that actually, rain's quite a tricky one. It can be tyres, can be windscreen wipers, can be all sorts of different things. So that's actually a really great driver, and we've been able to drive the automation of messaging optimization using these triggers. And moving on to the next slide, just want to show you another example using a weather API. This one again with is slightly more complex, but this one where the assets have been perfectly optimized to maximize the retail opportunities for UGG. Now, we are a global partner for Decker's brands, including UGG. That data-driven creative, dynamic creative in this way through DV360 Studio and Campaign Manager just allows us to help Decker's brands just massively scale their creative executions. And what's happening here in this particular creative is that various types of products are essentially being shown depending on the weather forecast for the user's location. This is part of a really hyper-targeted seasonal campaign that we tend to run, again, almost as an always-on strategy, but this gets switched up through the seasons. And it really is a cost-effective and time-effective way of using data-driven creative, as essentially the hero messaging and parts and the elements of the creative can really easily, almost automatically be optimized and switched out so that it's relevant for each campaign or any promotion that the client chooses based on their retail calendar. And this obviously helps to keep the creative fresh. It's reducing creative fatigue, which is another massive point. So I think we're talking about always on campaigns, but obviously you've got the tools, you've got the technology, you've basically got data-driven creative and dynamic creative that helps you combat things like creative fatigue. And using data-driven dynamic creative has allowed UGG to scale their creative and display assets for use in other key global markets by integrating product feeds that end up automatically powering the creative and optimizing to various other media strategies. So we can essentially repurpose these creatives for lower funnel campaigns such as remarketing campaigns. And then the next slide, I'm going to stick with the retail theme. Clarins, as many of you may know, are a premium health and beauty brand. Clarins have premium products, and these are products that deserve premium marketing assets. And Clarins take pride in producing quality marketing content. You will have seen lots of their quality TV commercials. They have a wealth of informative YouTube content like customer testimonials. And you can't help probably in the past not seeing point of sale assets in all the counters up and down all the different retail outlets and all the retail shops that Clarins appear. And you'll notice the amount of effort that is involved in producing those premium product shots and luxurious ingredient photography that makes up a lot of their marketing collateral. And this case study is a really great example of how Jellyfish are able to take those premium assets and make them work even harder in the digital ecosystem. And in this case, by adapting them for use in a data-driven dynamic creative campaign. So Clarins had grown a bit frustrated with their experience on a certain other retargeting platform that will go unnamed for now. But essentially, it's renowned for a lack of control, a lack of insight, and just really minimal kind of creative opportunities as well. And all these kind of compound to just simply hindering any chance for Clarins to be able to maximise the potential of all their assets and their campaigns. And, you know, as I said, these are assets that Clarins spend a lot of time and effort and budget to craft. So here at Jellyfish, what we were tasked to create is a suite of dynamic data-driven assets to meet the requirements of a multi-strategy, multi-funnel, multi-audience media campaign. So we tackled this with a full funnel messaging creative that's from awareness right through to purchase and loyalty. And what we've done here is simply optimize the client's existing assets. And in this case, some amazing YouTube testimonial videos and other really key brand and product assets. What we've done is translate these into a customer-centric, rich and engaging, data-driven, creative campaign, where Clarins essentially able to really speak directly to each of their target audience segments with messaging that really kind of matters most to each of those audience segments. So the segments being from ages, you want to speak to an audience for Clarins, the ingredients and certain elements of a product may mean certain ingredients and certain products mean something different to a younger audience compared to an older audience. And using dynamic creative in this way allows you to speak directly to those audiences. So using dynamic data-driven creative templates and decisioning rules, this allows Clarins to really drive the intent to purchase right through that funnel. Through the use of, I think here we were using sequential messaging based on has a viewer, has a user seen this ad? If they have, then let's drive their intent a bit further. Let's switch up the messaging. Let's really drive it through to the purchase messaging, where we can maybe throw in, where Clarins usually throw in a gift with purchase offer, really pushes the consumer over the line to convert. And this really demonstrates the fantastic opportunities that data-driven creative can give to brands who are looking to make their existing digital assets work even harder. So next slide, that is essentially it from me. If you'd like to learn more about how Jellyfish can help your assets work harder or help you maximize channel opportunities via asset optimization, please do get in contact with us or via your local friendly Google representatives. Look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, mate. That's awesome. In the interest of time, I'm going to swiftly move us on to our next speaker. So thank you. Some really interesting content there. Shane's contact details will be on at the end, so you can get in touch with him. But now I want to introduce Ollie Marlowe-Thomas and Claire. Ollie's the CEO of AdLib, and Claire is the client partner at AdLib. So I'm going to pass you over to Ollie. He's going to take us through what they have to offer and how they're working with their clients. Thank you again, Shane.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to be on here. Thanks for having us. If we could go on to the next slide, I think we've got a cheeky video to introduce. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I'm Ollie. If we go on to the next slide, I think there's a lovely picture of me, so you get a double whammy. And I'm here with Claire, our fantastic client partner at AdLib, and also my favorite employee. Everyone knows it. Actually, before I get going, a huge call out to both Claire's mother, Margaret, and my mother, Julia, who are listening in today with zero understanding of digital dynamic creative, but I know they'll be enjoying this like hugely. So we love numbers at AdLib. We're super enthusiastic about making sure we hit targets and deliver results. And so I thought I'd follow up with some numbers about me. I've been at AdLib for 3 years, left Google to start the company. I visited 94 countries, still barred from the USA after a trip to North Korea in 2017. And I've actually been on first dates. You can catch it. Maybe Nick, you could send it around in the follow-up. It's a great one. Didn't fall in love with the girl. Still very much, yeah, not interested in that. And then love to introduce Claire, our rockstar client partner at AdLib, who's going to partner with me on this presentation. Clary.
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Claire. I'm a client partner at AdLib. My numbers are nowhere near as interesting as Ollie's. Don't know how they ever could be, but I've been here with AdLib for just over 2.5 years. I'd say probably my longest sleep was just over 21 hours long, which was on a holiday as well, just to mention. And I've sold over 403 artworks, which just happens to be a measly 0.13% of the value of Hockney's most valuable paintings. So,
one of which I own, and I love very much. Look, next slide, please. So a quick introduction to AdLib, I guess. So founded by me, we're much smaller than Jellyfish, but we are only focused on creative. We're about 100 staff in 11 countries. We're creative partners of Google, YouTube, and we are integrated into those buying infrastructures. So one of the big areas that we focus on is streamlining all of that tedious process to get creative live in as simple a way as possible. So automating things like trafficking process, automating production. And we're here to supercharge your creative because if you go on to the next slide, we are in an industry of crap. Or poo, or whatever you want to call it. Every day I'm exposed to thousands of banners online, and as I'm sure you guys are on the call, and 99% of them are horrendous. They don't engage us, they don't stand out, they don't capture my attention. And this is really worrying because actually digital creative really matters. And if you go on to the next slide, we're all now engaging with brands online. You know, on the left, this is a really nice graph showing how basically people aren't no longer watching TV ads. And in fact, most people are buying online, and you can see that skyrocket. I think the viewership of TV ads went up to 2018, but I think in 2019 it crashed even further. And this is really worrying because if we go on to the next slide, you'll see that actually creative in digital is just not an investment area for brands. So you can see that despite now media budgets being roughly the same across digital and offline, still offline gets a huge volume of the investment. Really super interesting stat, which just I think helps explain and understand why digital creative is so crap. It's not getting the investment and time that it's needed. And you know, businesses like us and Jellyfish, and Shane showed some amazing examples, are really trying to make a difference and trying to make consumers find advertising online a useful and enjoyable and pleasant experience as much as possible, I guess. So I've just put some quick wins in the next slide to kind of show you guys some ideas of, you know, how to make digital creative better. So I think the first thing is about production and automation technology. So you've got to get your design right. And then you need to scale that design over lots of different formats. You guys all know digital creative is getting super complicated. There's lots of different partners, lots of different formats are required. Apps, video, display, social even, you know, there's a huge number of requirements. And to build all of those assets on high quality or at high quality is really, really hard. So thinking about like automation technology that can help you is really important. And at AdLib, we've built some nice technology to help understand, you know, whether we think the creative is, you know, also attention grabbing and memorable. We've built a whole load of artificial intelligence models to help us with that process. And also whether creative is on best practice. You know, Google do amazing documents to help brands and partners like us build out good on-brand or on best practice digital creative, and incorporating all of that lovely stuff that I'm sure Ben and Nick spend a lot of time working on into the creatives that we build for our customers is really, really important. And you can see down the bottom there, like AdLib has done a lot of work to reduce production costs and manual processes in this space. Secondly, and Shane talked a lot about this, but digital creative must be relevant. You know, it's so easy to make your ads engaging. And, you know, we're in a place where we're built on top of Google and YouTube, and we pull the media buying strategies, so we understand what's being targeted, and we're able to assemble the most relevant creative message for that audience to send out to the customer. You know, it's really, really interesting. When you do deploy more relevant or personalized ads, there tends to be significant uplift in performance. You know, we talked about numbers at the start, and I'll continue to give them, but, you know, we see anything from 30 to 160% across all of our campaigns. And it sounds like the Jellyfish guys do too. So really, really important. And then finally, you know, we must use the amazing strategies that are being defined by the media agency to ensure that the creative is aligned. You know, the creative agency creates a base asset. The media agency is creating lots of different targeting strategies. In some instances, hundreds of lines of targeting strategies. This audience, this time of day, this website. And if you just surface one creative execution to those targeted audiences, you're not going to get the results that you need. So like one thing that we are very proud of at AdLib is trying to understand what's going on the media side and surface that up to allow you to assemble creative for activation against those media buying strategies. And actually just last week, we announced an integration with DV360, which we're really, really excited about. So on to the next slide, please. I thought to help would break down AdLib into 4 core areas. And I think these are the things that really matter in our industry. So the first is production. So, you know, making sure that you get good digital production. And the way we've done that is by building, as I mentioned earlier, a load of different tools to help brands identify the most memorable scenes of a video or the most aesthetic scenes in a piece of content, and to help assemble those in an automated way. So, for instance, if we're given a 2-minute TV commercial, we can understand the most memorable scene in that piece of content and open with that piece of creative. Similarly, we can resize content, and I've got a nice example coming up shortly. The second is relevance, and you know, this basically boils down into a decision tree, and Ben was showing quite a lot of cool stuff in this space. But this is really, as I said, about aligning your creative and your media. The third is optimization, and Claire's going to talk through an amazing example of what we did with Shell to really understand creative optimization. I think in the industry, there's a huge amount of energy put into understanding media data and very little put into understanding creative data. If you have a lot of different creative executions that you're running against media buying strategies, the great news is you can optimize them. So as soon as you start to have more than one variant, you give yourself a whole load of levers to drive performance for your campaign. In the same way that you have those media levers of bid and website, you now have a whole load of creative levers of headline, image, content, audio, opening frame, end frame. And if you can manage those correctly, you can drive significant uplift in your performance. AdLib encourages all customers to try and optimize creative mid-campaign. And we've built like lots of workflow tools to help streamline that process. And then finally, support. You know, we know this is complicated. We know this needs a white glove service, and AdLib is heavily focused on trying to provide workshops and support in this space. The really exciting news is there's a huge amount of data that flows between these areas. So understanding, for example, what's driving performance on the optimization side can inform production in the future, just as a small example there. On to the next slide, please. So I'm going to go through an example of all of these just to give you a flavor of what we've done. So this was an example that we ran for Singapore Airlines of production, whereby we took the movie. I don't know if it's a movie, actually. It's when you sit down on the plane and they play that sort of, most of us can't even remember sitting on a plane, actually. But like when you sit on the plane and they play that sort of long form content to explain, you know, the brand, Singapore Airlines asked us to convert this into digital assets. It was a 2-minute TV commercial, and they said, we want to target families and older people traveling, all with assets, and we want you to use this base asset. We're able to quite quickly cut up the content, reformat that content into lots of different sizes, so squares, and obviously then larger display sizes as well, and align those creatives directly to targeting strategies in DV360. It was a huge win for the customer because they didn't have to go to their creative agency and ask them to make lots of new content, and it was really beautifully tailored creative. I'm wary of time, so I'm just going to jump onto Claire, who's going to talk about the relevance side and the optimization side.
Cool, thank you, Ollie. If you could just move to the next slide, I'm going to talk through eToro. So we partnered with this social trading platform where you can buy and sell different stock, and we worked with them on their zero commission stocks display campaign. So their goal was to get users to register and deposit money into the platform. Their main KPI was conversions for first-time depositors. And we started off the project by onboarding the whole team into AdLib, including their in-house creative team and their media traders. So this campaign was made in both English and in German. And using our fix and flex model from a single template, we were able to help them scale their creative to generating over 2,000 variants, whilst driving relevance and applying a learning agenda through creative testing. So the campaign was launched in like a really, really quick 5-day turnaround, which is incredible. And livestock prices were pulled into the flex part of the creative from a live feed, allowing eToro to update their ads in real time. We were also able to allow them to automatically show the percentage change for every 24 hours, each time the price point changed. And there were 8 specific stocks that eToro wanted to test to see how they would target and how they would perform. And because they were the top performers, people clicked on them. So once live and running, the AdLib reporting dashboard was used to check performance and their creative tests, so they could see the performance of their headline test and their CTA test. And it was there that they were also able to find out that the custom intent audiences generated 38% more conversions compared to the in-market audiences, which is hugely interesting. It was also proven that showing copy with like urgency drove 15% higher engagement. And we saw a direct correlation between the feed updates to the performance of the campaign, like improving results significantly. The CPA was reduced by a huge 11%, which was this is a first for eToro, allowing them to be more targeted and more relevant than ever. So to summarize, what we were able to help eToro achieve was an awful lot in a very little amount of time. So quickly activating them within just 5 days, pulling in live prices, and testing a small selection of headlines and CTAs. And the beauty of this is that this template is also now available to be reused across any other market, and it can be localized within any language. And as Ollie's mentioned, through our integration into DV360, we were able to automatically and directly automate the setup of the campaign in the ad server and in the buying platforms, allowing the audiences from DV360 to directly pull into the creative, aligning the audiences and the creative together. So the campaign was hugely successful, so much so that eToro actually converted from their trial to SaaS immediately. And already these templates are being in the midst of being reused for their next campaign, where their creative learnings are also being applied. So overall, a really great story for eToro. So moving on to the next slide, I'm going to talk through Shell. So we worked with Shell on a campaign with their brand team, and this was called The Great Travel Hack. So for this campaign, we had a series of episodes and pieces of video content that were telling a story about a challenge that was taking place with 2 teams traveling across America. There were over 2.5 hours of footage available, so tons and tons of content. And our goal was to improve brand awareness. Shell wanted to increase the time that users were spending with their brand, which we measured with view-through rate and cost per minute. So we quickly identified what was working using real-time data so that we could then create a new variant mid-flight to optimize. So through the use of image tagging, we identified some really key insights that we could use to create this optimal variant. In this instance, the footage that included scenes tagged with words like blue, water, and marine all achieved a higher view-through rate. And for the other tags, such as beauty or face or anything related to the host or the teams of influencers, performance actually dropped. So using these top performing tags, AdLib was able to stitch together a new variant, removing the scenes that were pulling performance down and increasing the number of scenes that were performing well, therefore building this new optimal variant. So we launched that new variant mid-flight through the direct integration with the Google stack, and immediately saw an 88% cost cheaper per minute. And the original creative also had, the optimal creative also had a 5 times higher view-through rate, significantly increasing the time that users were spending with the brand. So the automated setup of the campaign saved 64% of the end-to-end trafficking and setup process that would otherwise have been done manually. And I think overall, the key things to take away from this story and the key things that we've learned here was that high quality assets with the right content must always be shown to drive better performance. Being data-driven with creative is key, and a valuable insight can be shared with the wider business, saving future production costs and time. And updating the creative and refreshing content mid-flight really does drive performance. And this can all be automated, again, to save a huge amount of time and money for resource.
Thank you, Claire. I just know, sorry to jump in, I just know Nick wants to leave some time for questions, but thank you so much. That was fantastic. Huge amount of information there. Really, really useful. Next slide is just the last one to say, like, if you want to work with us and create some beautiful numbers, feel free to reach out to me directly on ollie@adlib.io. Would love to chat to you and catch up about like your creative channels challenges, and I know Claire would. Back to you, Nick. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. That's really interesting, and please get in touch with the AdLib guys, as same as the Jellyfish guys, if you've got any questions. Ollie, stay on the line because we have some questions come in. So the first one is about talking about data-driven creative. Will they work once cookies aren't available to use anymore? So Ollie, do you want to give your opinion on that, and then I'll give the kind of Google perspective?
Yes, hell yes, right? You know, you've got loads of different targeting strategies that will be useful. You've got keyword, you've got context, you've got weather, you've got geo. There's so many different ones that can be used. Google are currently working, as far as I'm aware, on a solution to help ensure you can continue to use their amazing audience segments and continue to use first-party data in a way that we know and love. But from my perspective, some of the most powerful creative executions that we use at AdLib every day are not actually first-party data and not even third-party data. It's really the stuff which makes it useful for the user. So the example Claire gave around the stock price, I think really, really nice example. Like Claire we were able to, you know, show a really relevant, timely message to the consumer. We do another stuff with sports brands where we tell them when a match is about to start in 7 days and they should download it and get access to that subscription. We tell them it's going to happen in 7 days, then it's going to happen in 5 days, then it's going live today, then we tell them it's kicked off, you know, really, really nice sequential messaging. And I think these are the areas that, you know, dynamic creative of the future will really win in. Ben, would love to hear, you know, what the Google view is too, though.
Yeah, I'll give my.
Oh, sorry, Nick. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, look, the industry's shifting to meet higher privacy standards, and we support that. Technologies like ITP and ETP are really, really important, and they are going to impact remarketing list sizes. But Google audiences can minimize impact because they're built based on contextual signals alongside that machine learning. So, you know, these are really simple to activate with your creative ad canvas. So really, really easy. And we'll work with brands to do that. The most important thing here is to build a creative campaign that covers all areas of the funnel so that you have that relevant message regardless of the data that's available. So yeah, love to work with you on more of those kind of things. Next question, please. Ben, do you want to flip to the next question?
Yeah, it's presenting now. So yeah, do the dynamic templates support integration with a client's product feed? So I guess just to go into that a little bit more. So when it comes to product feeds, the recommended approach really is using our studio products with Campaign Manager. That's really where you're going to be able to take advantage of all of your, you know, all the rows in your feed and start to tailor that message based on those individual products. Ad Canvas itself within DV360 is more of a kind of upper mid-funnel type strategy, so that it doesn't necessarily support huge product feeds. As I demonstrated there in the demo, you can do upload feeds up to 2,000 creative variants. So you can go and create, if you've got like a small product set you want to work on, or if you want to do some testing on kind of that upper funnel top supporting products, absolutely you can do that. But really, if you want to start integrating large product feeds, you know, you got hundreds of thousands of SKUs, that's really where the power of Studio and Campaign Manager would really come in.
One build on that. Google's got a format that you can build within AdCanvas called Panorama, which is a really nice templated format which you can bring in all those key products. The question came from someone anonymously, but do reach out to me if you want to kind of explore that further.
Great. Next question was, can you export files from AdCanvas for use on other channels, example social? And if so, what file formats can you export? So when it comes to AdCanvas, AdCanvas is purely a DV360 product. It's designed and built really to take advantage of all the information that DV360 can take from within the bid space. So when DV360 is bidding on that ad and that ad is being shown, it's controlling essentially all of the signals that it's getting in. So things like that scroll animation that I demonstrated, that wouldn't necessarily be something that a social channel would have available. So today, you can't export any of the AdCanvas formats for use anywhere else. But obviously what you can do is, if you are using Google Web Designer to build your own creative, then as long as you're not doing any of the dynamic linking to DV360, any of those creative you build, you can absolutely export to other channels. Like Google Web Designer is an open platform for building creative for any format and for any kind of channel. It's simply HTML5 format, so that is absolutely possible doing that. But the AdCanvas formats themselves are exclusively for DV360 only. Cool. Next question was, does AdCanvas output in video formats, and are the video assets that are output dynamic, or is it just the ad unit around it? So initially, it's that latter part. So it's the ad unit around it that's dynamic, and you can change all those elements there. And then you can, as I demonstrated with that particular video asset flipbook, you can absolutely make the video file dynamic within AdCanvas, and you can change that video within the creative as well as all the other pieces around it. If you're talking about dynamic video, there are some things in the works and some things coming that will help with that. You can already do some of that today in YouTube. So if you're doing YouTube directly, so not through AdCanvas or through DV360, but if you're working with YouTube, there are some dynamic video assets available within there that will create those for you. But I guess just watch this space. It's obviously a big area for us, so we are looking at ways we can accommodate more dynamic video in the future. Next question. So are there any limitations to running dynamic creative in DV360 as opposed to Studio? Nick, do you want to take that, or do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I can certainly give my opinion. DV360 AdCanvas doesn't have all the features that are available in Studio, but equally it does also have new features that isn't available in Studio, such as contextual targeting. So for advanced sort of executions like those larger feeds or product marketing that we talked about, or bulk actions targeting, Studio is kind of your best bet to build, and certainly talk to Ollie or the guys about how you build those out. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me, really.
Yeah, I guess for me, is the best way to think about it is that AdCanvas is really there to help support prospecting and kind of cohort type targeting across broad audiences. So if you want to be able to create a little bit more customization based off an audience, a good use case as well that I didn't really mention is that you can use audiences that are completely nothing to do with your brand. An example was that a car manufacturer used things like music tastes to change the way they spoke to their customers. So, if you're into classical music, they may use something about how quiet the interior of the car is, and what a lovely smooth ride it is. And if you're into metal music, they may talk about the performance of the car. So you don't have to just think about it in that perspective, and that's what DV360 is really powerful at doing. But then it's that lower funnel, one-on-one mass creative targeting, lots and lots of variants, using APIs, weather feeds, using product feeds. As soon as you start getting into those realms, that's really where the power of Studio and our partners really come in. So don't think of them as like competing products. They really are complementary products, just depending where you are in the journey. Cool. So This is a simple one. Do you need to use your templates or can we build our own? So as I mentioned in the demo, I know we didn't go into it a lot, but Google Web Designer is where you can completely build your own from scratch. It is an open source authoring tool. So if you're building HTML5 creative directly in Google Web Designer, then absolutely you can bind that to DV360 and select what you want to make dynamic, and then that can be uploaded. So the Google one that I demonstrated, that is a completely built from scratch. That's not a Google template. That's my own build. So yeah, absolutely, you can use the templates or you can build your own from scratch and then use those in DV360. That's completely possible. Another really simple one, will this be available as a recording after session? Yes, this will be available on the same YouTube channel you're on now. So this link should support the same video. If not, we'll send out the separate recording afterwards as part of our feedback survey as well.
With that, I think that's probably the last of the questions. And I just wanted to kind of take a moment to thank our speakers from Jellyfish and from AdLib. Shane, Ollie, really appreciate your time, your input, and the ideas that you shared with us today. Hopefully the folks on the live stream have found it useful. Ben and I will follow up with a feedback form, and we'll follow up with any questions that we've missed. But we are kind of out of time now, so I wanted just to thank everyone, and we'll follow up the feedback form. And on that feedback form will be the contact details for both Ollie and Shane. So do get in touch with them if you've got any follow-up questions. Thank you, and that's the end of our live stream, and see you next time.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone.
Have a good day.